Shalom from Jerusalem. We have the privilege to be briefed today by General Yaakov Amidror in reserve. He's Anne and Greg Rossander Senior Fellow at the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. General Amidror was National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister Netanyahu and Chairman of the National Security Council between 2011 and 2013. He previously served for 36 years in senior IDF posts, including commander of the military colleges, military secretary to the Minister of Defense, director of the Intelligence Analysis Division in Military Intelligence, and chief intelligence officer in the Northern Command. He is also today a distinguished fellow at the JISS Gemunder Center. He's the author of 3 books on intelligence and military strategy, and he will speak today about Israel in a changing world. So, General Amidror, it's your floor.
If I have to show what the changing world means, is you can take the visit of the Chief of Staff in Manama, in Bahrain, the announcement that the Prime Minister is going to visit India, the fact that the Prime Minister is speaking with President Putin and President Zelensky about compromises in Ukraine, the announcement of the Minister of Defense that Israel is going to have anti-missile laser system, first system in the world, and so on and on, events which give a clear impression that the world is changing around us, and in some cases we are making the difference, we are making the change. In some cases we don't make the change, but we have to find ways to deal with it. I think that the main 3 big elements which are making the world different than in the past is, first, the clear understanding that the coming generation or generations will be more than busy to deal with the race between China and the United States of America. The Chinese believe that America is declining superpower, and they are the rising one. The Americans think that they are not declining, but are tired from taking responsibility around the world, but they are still very strong. But the whole race between China and America will be very significant in the coming years. And Israel, as other countries, will have to make decisions where we stand relating to those 2 countries. It's not going to be easy because we don't want to lose the relations with economic benefits that we have with the relations with China, but at the same time we understand there is no substitute to our relations with the United States of America. The second change in the world is what we see now in Europe, is the decision of Putin, but Putin is only a symbol of school of thought that believe that by force they can achieve their goals. In this school, there is a good student called Iran, North Korea, and others. And the question is how the world will organize to contain those forces, aggressive forces. Today it's Putin in Ukraine, tomorrow or yesterday it was the Iranians in Lebanon or the Iranians in Yemen, and so on and so forth. So this is an issue that Israel is in the middle of the turmoil because it is about the Middle East. The third big change, and I'm not sure that we fully understand the meaning of it, is the new relations that we as the State of Israel have with Arab countries like Bahrain, Arab Emirates, Morocco, on the table and with Saudi Arabia under the table. Think about the phenomena that the chief of staff of the IDF is traveling to Manama, flying with the IDF aeroplane over Saudi Arabia. You can understand that this is on the table, and you can just imagine what there is under the table. And at the same time, the new alliance that we build with Cyprus and Greece, based on the energy basin of the East-South Mediterranean. Egypt is part of this group, and I think that for the long range, that will be a very significant one because it's open gates to Europe that we didn't have ways to enter in the past. There is a big plan to connect Europe with the electricity cable through Crete and Cyprus to Israel and to Egypt, and the whole area will be much more connected to this part of Europe. And you can understand that the decision of Erdogan to invite the President of the State of Israel is because he saw what's going on in the Middle East, and he understood that he's lagging behind and he doesn't want to be there. So what will be at the end, I don't know. He will have to make some decisions about Hamas, which is now using Turkey as its big basis out of Gaza. But no question that the decision of Erdogan to invite the president is very much connected to the new position of Israel in the Middle East, and the fact that Erdogan understood that he's not part of it. What will happen now, what he will be ready to compromise about, how we will demanding we should not sacrifice any one square millimeter with our relations with Cyprus and Greece, but at the same time we have to take into consideration the needs of Turkey. It's not going to be easy, but it's much more better than the old relation in which we fought with the Turkey on the Marmara coming into Gaza. And it is the fact that Erdogan understood that if he wants to change his situation in the Middle East, he should compromise with Israel, find a way to invite the leaders of the state of Israel to visit Turkey, and let's see what will happen out of it. So if we speak about changing world, it is about China versus United States of America. It is the West versus evilness and bad regimes like Putin's Iranians and so on and so forth, and the fact that Israel is in a different situation because of its new relations in the Middle East with Arab countries, and not just Arab countries, it is wider than that. There are some rumors about Indonesia, maybe in the future. So I think this is the three big issues which are making the world different than the world in the past. And Israel will have to play the new world in the new situation because we have better tools now in our hands, very good economy, very strong technology, very wide capacity of military tools, and all of that are currencies that should be used by the government of Israel to enhance the situation of the state of Israel in the future. But I think that one issue should not be forgotten and should not be neglected. And this is that at the end of the day, whatever will be the situation, Israel should be in a position to defend itself by itself. We need a big relation with America. We want good relations with others. We want to build these coalitions in the Middle East. But at the end of the day, it should be very clear, Israel should be in a position to defend itself by itself. We cannot allow a situation like Ukraine to happen to Israel. And it will not happen, whatever will be the price. So yes, it's a changing world, but in this changing world, there are some elements that should not be changed and should be and Israel should insist to build these capacities in the future as it did in the past. And this is an opening. If you want to ask questions, I'd be more than happy to.
Okay, we'll open it for questions, please. You can ask. Okay, Greg, go ahead.
I'm concerned about the trustworthiness of President Erdogan and how far Israel can go in assuming that there is a good faith effort and a meaningful effort to improve relations. I had the experience of attending a meeting with him among a group of Jewish leaders, maybe about 6 or 7 of us, with him and his staff in 2016. And he had the audacity, when somebody asked him about their support of Hamas, he said to us, a group of Jewish leaders, Hamas is a resistance organization. It's not a terrorist organization. And I've always been sorry that the whole group didn't get out and walk out at that point, but that was a time when Israel, the Israeli government, was looking to reestablish relationships with Turkey and was interested in making nice with him. But the point is that if assuming he's been telling the truth, I mean, that he's an extreme Islamist, I mean, how far can Israel go in relying and trusting him?
At the end, the answer is very little. If you speak about trust, very little. But he will be judged by his actions, not by his intentions. If he will stop the cooperation with Hamas in Turkey and will expel the Hamas members, which are very active, organizing terror actions in Judah and Samaria and Jerusalem. And this is one test. The other test is where he will stand relating to the efforts of the Turks themselves to destabilize Jerusalem by interfering on the ground. Third, and not least, is how he will be ready to cooperate to contain Iran, and so on and so forth. I know that those who were involved in the resuming of these relations understand that it should be, as we say in Turkish, yavaş yavaş. Yavaş yavaş means slowly, slowly. And we don't jump to anything soon. And we made a clear signal by the visit of the president in Cyprus and in Greece before the visit in Turkey, that it will not be done on the account of Greece and Cyprus and their relations with Israel. So it will be a very slow process in which Erdogan will have to show that he is serious, ready to take measures, otherwise it will be stopped.
Are your Greek friends comfortable with what's happening? Are they supportive or are they not?
I don't know if they are supportive. They probably prefer that we will not have such better relations with Erdogan, but it doesn't matter. A country should not close doors when they're opened by the other side. There is a say, when someone is opening the tent in the Middle East, you don't ask questions, you are going in. Yeah. And you try to achieve when you are in the tent, not outside the tent. And here we should be very careful and should be very clear towards Erdogan and to understand he's ambitious and to understand his ideology. He's an Islamist by far more extreme than many others, but at the end he will be judged by his actions, not by his intentions.
Thank you.
Yes, but you are right. It should be very cautious process.
Yeah. Any additional question?
Well, if nobody has a question, believe me, I have a million questions. So talking about Turkey and Iran, at one point I thought it looked like Turkey and Iran were trying to see eye to eye, but which would be very unfortunate. But I take it that that's not the case anymore, and that's one of the reasons why there is some move towards cooperation between Israel and Turkey, with looking at Iran as a common enemy. I mean, what is the status of those relations?
I think that the people are using history to show that there is potential tension between the two empires, the Ottoman one and the Persian one. But I think this is a little bit of exaggeration in the present situation. It's not that they like each other and have many reservations from the other side policy, but I don't see an actual tension which is leading to friction between Turkey and Iran. Maybe less cooperation, but not more friction. I think that is also something that we have to take into consideration when we speak with the Turks. It is not a few years ago they cooperate with the intelligence of the Iranians. It's not the situation today, but still we have to be very careful when we exchange intelligence with the Turks.
Yaniv? We don't hear you, Yaniv.
Still nothing?
Now it's good.
Now it's good. Okay. I wanted to ask you, there's an interesting article this morning in the Times of Israel talking about Israel's capacity to fly over Syrian airspace if the Russians blocked us. And the whole idea was that the reason that the Israelis are very ambiguous over their policy in Ukraine was because they don't want to upset the Russians. Do you believe that these parallels drawn in the 70s in the war of attrition, where we were still able to attack the Egyptians, exist today? And if not, what limitations would we have if we went against the Russian public opinion, and if they wouldn't let us fly over, if we actually could, and what engagement might look like with anti-aircraft systems provided by the Russians?
You cannot compare the situation in the 70s with Egypt. The war of attrition was a war, and when the Russians decided to intervene directly against Israel, it took exactly 5 minutes, and 5 Russian pilots, it was USSR, it's not the Russians, USSR pilots were under their paratroops, and they didn't land back with their airplanes. And you know who was the people which were more happy than anyone in the area for this result? The Egyptians, because they told the Russians, what you are selling us is a crap. It's not the Israeli weapon system, the American weapon system is much better. And the Russian tried to convince them it's not the weapon system, it's about the pilots. But after 5 Russian pilots were intercepted by our airplane, it was clear that it's not only the pilots, it's only the pilot as well, but not only the pilots. This is not the situation today. Today we are not fighting against the Russians are not involved. The Russians allow us to act. We don't ask their permission, but they understand what we do. And there is kind of silent agreement that we are acting against the Iranians, not against, for sure not against the Russians, but not the Syrians as well. And the Russians understand what we do, when they don't interfere. We are not cooperating with them, but they don't interfere. If they decide to interfere, it will change the whole balance there. The Air Force probably will continue to act, but that will be much, 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 much more complicated, problematic, challenging, and we might lose some pilots. And we don't want to attack Russian radar in Hamimim or Russian missiles in somewhere else. When it is operated by Russians, it's operated by Syrians, we do it from time to time. So yes, they have a huge spectrum of measures that they can take, not to prevent us completely, but to make our life very complicated. And for us, it's very high interest to not to let the Iranians to build the second part of the Ring of Fire in Syria. They succeeded to do it in Lebanon. They have in Lebanon 150,000 rockets and missiles. Slowly, many more of them are becoming accurate. We don't want them to have such a capacity in Syria. And up till now, we succeeded to prevent it from being implemented by the Iranians. If the Russians will be less open to our needs, as I told you, we can continue to add, but it will be much more complicated and problematic. And probably the success will be less than the achievements of the last 10 years.
If you were still the national security advisor, would you be advising the prime minister to keep his head down and not anger the Russians? Or would you tell him that it's not in his interest to come out publicly against Putin?
I think that I don't know what I would say to as the prime minister, national security advisor, but I think that the policy is the right policy.
Okay.
Any additional question?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead, Milt.
Please.
I thought when Russia invaded Ukraine, it was a great time for Israel to attack the Iranian nuclear sites. What do you think about that?
Probably you are right, but we decided not to do it.
That's a mistake.
You know how many how many times Israel was advised by those who are sitting outside Israel to make the decision, and the decision here was different. I'm not having such a decision is a decision about a war, big war. Big war means thousands of rockets and missiles will be launched by Hezbollah into Tel Aviv and Israel, all Israel. Hundreds of missiles will be launched by the Iranians into Israel, and so on and so forth. So it's not a decision about destroying the nuclear capacity of the Iranians. It's a decision about a war against Iran and Hezbollah. And such a war we don't make only because you have 2 weeks during which the Russians are attacking Ukraine. It's something that you have to prepare with yourself, with your military forces, with the Air Force, with Americans, with others. It's not that you jump to the sea because there is a war in Ukraine. With all due respect, such decisions should not make only because Putin decided to attack Ukraine.
Is that better? Hundreds or thousands of regular explosives or one nuclear missile coming?
Well, I'm not saying that Israel should not destroy the nuclear facility in Iran. On the contrary, I think that it's essential to do it. But it is not something that you jump to it because Putin invaded Ukraine. You do it when you think and when you prepare yourself, and when you have all the capacities which are needed, you will the legitimacy inside and outside. It's not something that you jump. It is more serious preparations.
Yes, Yaniv.
I'm curious, what are the lessons that you think or that the Chinese are taking out of this watching Taiwan? Is there any implications for Taiwan?
There is. I think that President Xi is calling his people and say, if you have any attempt or any plan
How did I do with all this junk? Good. I did good? And it's still. Oh, actually, very good.
Mills, control Debbie.
Oh, he hears me. Sorry.
I think that if I'm President Xi, I'm calling my commanders and say, guys, if you have any plan to invade Taiwan in next year or two, postpone it. We have to prepare much to be in a better situation than we are today. I see the reaction of the West about Ukraine. China cannot take such punishments and cannot be isolated like Russia. So we have to be much more prepared. I think that for China, the decision which had been taken by the West, the sanctions and so on, is a nightmare. China will postpone the attack on Taiwan because they're afraid that if they do it, the reaction will be as severe as it is in Europe today, and they don't want to be in this position. And they have time.
Back to Iran. I'm sure you're not happy, to put it mildly, about what appears to be the new iteration of the JCPOA. But my question is, has Israel been comfortable with the level of communication with the United States as these negotiations have been going on, and the ability to understand what the status and to provide input? I know that wasn't good under Obama. Is it better now?
No, I don't agree that it was not better in Obama. I think that the problem with the administration of Obama was not lack of communication, but lack of ability to change the views of those who made the agreement, which some of them didn't understand the problems. Some of them understood the problems, but were ready to take risks that should not be taken. It's not lack of communication. It's lack of openness on the other side to the threats that such an agreement might bring into the Middle East.
What about now? Is it the same now?
Yes, it is exactly the same, with less noises from the Israeli side. But if you read what was said by the Prime Minister and the next Prime Minister about the Revolution Guards and the decision or the attempt of the Americans to take it out of the terror organization list, it's unbelievable. It's really losing all moral ground, losing any shame from the policy. It's unheard of. The Americans know, at least as we know, that this organization is initiating more terror actions in the world than any other organization today. Maybe not more than ISIS, but other than ISIS, this is the organizer of most of the terror actions around the world, all over the world. And the Americans are very much involved in intercepting those efforts. So they know all the details, and they lost all their shame by this decision. It's unbelievable. It's really losing the moral ground, leave alone the issue of the agreement, bad agreement, good agreement. Here it is about something else. It's you don't stand for your own principle.
I think many of us here certainly see it that way and are anguished by this surrender as it appears to us, to the Iranians in favor and service of some ideology, some concept of kicking the can down the road or thinking that this is going to moderate Iran. The word is unbelievable. It's just unbelievable.
If they would believe that it will moderate Iran, I don't agree, but I can understand. They don't believe it. They know that it will not.
Well, Obama did. Obama said that at the time.
Maybe, but this administration, they don't have any illusion about it. It's just pushing the can down the road. That's it.
Well, I think there is also hope to get Iranian oil and to reduce to some extent, the prices.
Yeah, Venezuela too.
Yes, but all the arrangements were before the crisis. I'm quite sure that it is not connected to oil because all the arrangement about the agreement were before the crisis in Russia. So this is not the case here.
Okay, any other questions?
May I ask a question?
Yes,
Go ahead, Susan.
Do you think Israel can trust the United States, this government with Biden, to not undermine, if they were going to attack Iran and they share that information, do you think we can trust this administration not to undermine them and betray them to the Iranians?
I think that every country in the world, which is a serious one, keeps part of its card near the chest and not share the content of the card with others. And if the feeling in Israel will be that the Americans might interfere and stop Israel, or Israel will try to put pressure on Israel not to do what is needed, Israel can do it without telling the Americans. The vision of the founders of Israel, that Israel will always be in a position to defend itself by itself. In the meaning of it includes a situation in which we are not asking the Americans or even not telling the Americans what we are going to do.
And did you see
Yeah.
that what's his name? Ted Cruz was putting forth a bill to try to get bunker busters to Israel. Did you see that article?
I think it's more a symbol of support. Israel does not have the airplanes that can carry this bomb.
Oh, they don't?
Even America does not have too many of them. So I think that technically it's almost impossible.
Oh.
Well,
I'm all done.
well,
כן, רציתי לדעת, איך אתה רואה את ההשלכות?
in English.
Oh, how do you see the implications of the war between Russia and Ukraine on our region? The options.
In our region?
Yeah.
In our region, I don't see too many changes because of the war. It's made, it is now more clear than in the past that the Americans are hesitating to take part in wars and are ready to help, but from outside. And countries in the Middle East will have to understand that this is the situation in most cases, not all cases, but many cases. And cooperation between countries in the Middle East will be the only answer to face challenges that the region might face in the future. I don't think that the countries here were very impressed by the achievements of the Russian army, but still they have some interesting capabilities that might be brought into the Middle East in the future. But all in all, I think that the achievements of the Russian army is not a great success, and people in the Middle East understand understanding. The main question that I have, and I don't have an answer to, what lesson the countries around Israel will learn from the fact that the Americans are determined to pull out, not to interfere with their own forces, to let the Iranians to launch rockets, missiles, ballistic missiles into neighboring countries, all of them friends of America, theoretically, Saudi Arabia and the Emirates. What will the lesson? Will the lesson be that they have to compromise with Iran, or the lesson will be that they should build something inside the Middle East based on the cooperation of countries in the Middle East without American umbrella, but with American positive attitude towards new coalitions in which Israel will be a strong anchor? But this is a big question that I don't want to answer.
But this coalition that you started off with the Emirates, can this hold on without an American presence in the Middle East? In other words,
Why
the
not?
Emirates and the Saudi Arabians at one point or another, or even the Egyptians, to make the calculation that it's, Israel is not strong enough to stand up against Iran. The Americans are not here. Let's try to appease Iran. And we saw some signs already from.
We don't see any sign for that. No, I don't think. We don't see any sign for that. It is true that countries in the Middle East are searching meetings, politics in all around the Middle East. The Emirates visited Erdogan. Erdogan visited, tried to visit, invited the president of the State of Israel. But we don't see any sign of the Emirates or the Saudis compromising with the Iranians. On the contrary, it's a good question that you ask. I don't know if they will come to the conclusion at the end that Israel is very weak and the Americans are out and the Iranians are strong, and all that together. I don't know what if you ask me what we should do, we should show that we are not weak.
And that's what the realpolitik usually teaches us, that when there's not enough power to stand up, allies look for a way out and joining the other side. I mean,
Yes, but
that would happen in World War II.
But they understand that compromising with the Iranians, it's the end of their countries as they are today, and they don't want to be in this position. Understand what the Iranians have in mind relating to the regimes in the Arab world. Understand what Iran means. So what will they do? They will agree to disabandon themselves, to commit suicide. I don't see it.
I have a question. What's driving American policy vis-a-vis Iran?
What?
What's driving American policy now towards Iran? Compromise, giving up everything. I don't get it. I don't get it.
I think that if I have to go into the American shoes and to try to understand what they have in mind, they say to themselves, we have huge problem competing with China, and we have to focus in the East. We have problem not as big. We have to contain Putin, who surprised us by attacking Ukraine, and we found a way how to contain him by sanctions, which will be provided by all the European countries together. And we have an issue called Iran. It's number 3 or 4 in our list. Let's put it aside. It will not disturb us from doing what is necessary relating to China and Russia and other issues that we might face. And if in the future will be a need, Iran is not a big problem, and we will have to deal with it. Maybe we are not sure about it, but maybe we will have to deal with it. There is a group in the administration that believe that Iran is not a problem. that Iran is part of the solution. That it is more problematic to have relations with the crazy guys which kill media people in Saudi Arabia, and the corrupted rulers of the Emirates and other countries in the Middle East. And they prefer the corrupted system of Iran. I don't understand why morally it's more justified. I don't understand why this corruption is better than the other side corruption. I don't understand why this regime, which killed, I don't know, hundreds of people, is better than the regime in Saudi Arabia or in the Emirates. I really don't understand why there is why they prefer this side on the Gulf. But I understand why they want to push the Iranian issue aside and to say it's not the main problematic one. We will deal with it in the future. Now we have to focus on China and maybe Russia.
Yeah. Julio, do you have a question?
Amidror.
Yeah.
What happened to Yaakov?
Yes.
Julio Messer.
I want to ask you, let me put a different approach. American foreign policy was always more sensitive to what's going on the ocean in Asia than in Europe even. If you think about it, during what's called the isolation years, the United States was never had an isolation, non-intervention or whatever isolation during the 30 years between World War I and World War II. In other words, Asia was always more important than Europe. And I would say, well, today, without Britain, the situation has changed. However, I can't foresee a situation where the US, and that's why I understand that wing in what you described in the Pentagon, which always, or in the Foreign Office, in the State Department, that says that China is the real enemy. And we cannot allow them to become hegemonic in the Far East, vis-a-vis Japan and vis-a-vis Korea, South Korea and India. And I think that whoever foresees that China will join America against Russia, I can foresee that because the Chinese also understand that. So the Chinese question is really, really important. And
What is the question?
Again, what will be the implications of the war? And
I don't think that you are right about your historic description. During after the Second World War, it was quite clear that Europe.
The First World War. Not about the First World War.
The first and
World War.
After the second one, the Europe was much more important than the Pacific. The intervention, the investments, the allocation of forces was much more to the European arena. After the collapse of the USSR, it took a few years, and yes, America understood that Russia is not as strong as USSR. But before that, it was the main issue for the Americans. And yes, it's at the end, America is assessing the situation from time to time. And if they feel that the Pacific is less problematic and there are other problems around the world, they will change their attitude. Today, the assessment is very clear. China is the strategic threat to the position of the United States of America around the world, and it should be contained.
And what I'm saying is that this is not something new. It's
No, it's new. It's during the Cold
traditional
War.
American foreign policy.
During the Cold War, that was not the situation. The years after the Second World War, for sure, that was not the situation.
Yeah, because Russia was stronger. But again, the Pacific,
Many issues.
Pacific
but-
is more important,
Okay.
at least as important as the European.
Okay. Any more questions? If not, thank you very much for the opportunity. And I hope that we will find good ways how to deal with the changing world.